Hello everyone. So we'll be starting in few minutes. All right. Let me actually set up some stuff. See. May 23. Hello everyone. We'll be starting in few minutes. Let me just go ahead and send some notifications. Okay, everything is fine over here. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? Happy Friday to everyone. So if you can go ahead and introduce yourself in the YouTube chat, where are you logging in from? And that will be great. Let me know if you can hear me. You can go ahead and introduce yourself in the YouTube chat. Where are you logging from? And go ahead and type your questions. If you have any questions, I can answer. You can type your questions, and I'll be more than happy to take a look at the questions. Thank you. And where are you logging in from? Matthias? Matthias? Hello from Pakistan. Well, that's great. Which part of Pakistan? Hodaba Sayed? So this is more of a ask me questions. I mean, Swift. If you need question about like Swift UI, obviously I don't know everything about. I don't know everything about Swift UI, but if you have any questions regarding architecture, if you have question about server-side Swift, uh, Makai says I'm from Poland. Okay, nice, Poland, very nice. And if you have any questions, always visit. I always wanted to visit Poland. I think somebody was talking about hosting an iOS conference over there, but hopefully, hopefully that will happen, and I'll be able to at least apply to speak over there. Khudaba Said is saying Islamabad. Okay, that's really good. I grew up in Karachi, so I've been to Islamabad a number of times, but yeah, I grew up in Karachi. Very nice. All right. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and type it out in the YouTube chat. I'm looking at your chat, and I'll be able to answer those career related questions. If you're just starting out, you need some guidance, any kind of questions you want to ask, you can go ahead and ask. All right. But a little bit about myself, if I want to introduce myself, my name is Mohammad Azam, and I my day job is to teach at a coding boot camp. So I teach web development, I teach machine learning. All right. So I teach those kind of things, and I also do my own iOS stuff on the side, which you may have already seen some of my stuff like at Azam Sharp School. So uh, I create videos for Azam Sharp School and my YouTube channel, and I sell those courses and workshops and so on. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. We have some people joining in. Hudaba Sayed is saying Swift UI versus UI kit. Well, if you're starting a brand new project, I would 100% uh, use Swift UI. All right. Even if you're working in an old project that uses UI kit, all the new screens, the new features you're going to build, you should do in Swift UI because that is kind of like moving forward, right? And just to be honest, Swift UI makes it just so easy to create interfaces, right? So that's why you should go with Swift UI. So greenfield project where no line have been written, I would 100% use Swift UI. Projects that are already in construction or maintenance and you need some new screens, you should create new screens using Swift UI. All right, so Swift UI for me. Stephen Yates is saying you now have access to the finance kit. I see on Twitter. Does finance kit only see transaction on Apple Pay, Apple Card? Yes, finance kit currently, and hopefully they will include more, more exchanges, or what should I call it, more companies, I guess, more bank accounts, more banks. But currently they only support Apple Pay, Apple Cash, uh, I mean, Apple checking account, like Apple credit card. I mean, I don't really. Apple credit card, Apple, what is that called? Apple Cash and Apple Savings. Um, and that's pretty much it, I think. Yeah. So only three things they use. And yeah, so it takes you around like it took me around like 21 days or 3 weeks to get the entitlements. And once I have the entitlements now, I can actually build my app that integrates with Finance Kit. So you have to answer some question. Why are you requesting it? How are you going to use it? And all those kind of things. And then from there, when you fill out the form, it takes 3 weeks. Well, at least for me, it took 3 weeks. Um, Mauritius is asking, is it the same as dispatch main.async? What is What is same as async? I think I missed the original part of your question. The only thing I'm getting it is it the same as, I think you're saying that the async in await is same as dispatch main.async, or the main actor probably. Yes, main actor would be probably similar to dispatch queue.main.async, because main actor, if that's the question, because I don't see the first half of the question. But yeah, so main actor allows you to run things on your, uh, you know, on the main thread. All right. All right. Faris is saying, I looked at your architecture course, which are explain about convert MVV into MV, but move the view model to certain domain, so we don't need to make every view model to the view. Yes. In my architecture course, and let me actually share my screen over here. I'm sharing my screen. I wrote a very long article, which probably you may have already read, which is this. That's the article. It's a pretty long article, but I think the first part of the article talks about the architecture. Um, yes, if you are building SwiftUI application, there's no real need to create view model for every single screen, because not every single screen will be using a separate source of truth. I mean, think about it this way, right? If you are building, probably it will be a good idea to, oh, that. All right. It will be a good idea if we look at the code, I guess, right? So let me see if I can actually type something. Okay, so let's say that if we are building something, let's say that we have a budget list screen, budget, or add budget screen, budget detail screen, right? Um, in a typical view model approach, what people usually do is do this: budget list view model, add budget view model, budget detail view model. And they end up with three or even more view model depending on the number of screens that they're using. But the budget list screen, add budget screen, budget detail screen, what are they doing? What kind of domain objects are they performing actions on? Or what kind of objects or models do they need? It's right there in the name of the screen. Budget. That's all they need, right? So what I usually do is I just create a budget store. That's it. Budget store give you access to budgets. Everyone can now, who needs this information, go get it from the budget store. All right, so that's what I use. Um, and it makes your life, it makes your application much more, I would say, much more simple and much more easier to use. And inside your budget list screen, which is basically a view, you can access these things. Like if this is a view, right? Budget list screen is actually a view. So inside this, you can access those things from an environment. So in the environment, I can say budget store.self, private var budget store, and there we go. I can just start using budget store right there in my environment. Okay, and that's it. So that's how I use it, and it makes life very much simple, because now you don't have like 30 different view model for every single screen. You have the view model or a store which is based on the data that it will provide to the screens, basically a source of truth. So that's why I encourage this kind of approach. And the funny part is that when I started writing these articles, right, this article, this was published a long time ago, probably 2000, yeah, 2023. See that, the date right there, 2023. I got a real pushback from the iOS developer community. I mean, they were like all over me, like, "Oh, this is not going to work. This is not going to do this. This is complete rubbish." But now we're in 2025, and I see a lot of people talk about this article, and a lot of people talk about that how they have moved away, and not like small people. I'm talking about people who have been in the industry for a long time. Like Sean Allen is one of them. Then you have several other people who are talking about these things. All right. So try it out. I mean, try to read the article and try out this approach. Just if you have a pet project, just try to update it and see how it works. Another question is, do you separate your projects into packages? Do you have any resources on how to do that? You can definitely create different packages for your project if you plan to reuse that functionality in other projects. So I guess a good example would be networking, right? I mean, networking is something that you create a generic layer and you want to use networking in several other projects, then you can create a networking kit. I mean, that can be your package. You can push it out to, the Swift Package Manager website. You can make it as a SPM package and then import it. So these kind of things you have to think about. I'm currently looking into finance, and yeah, finance has a package called Finance Kit. That's a package. And I think you have like a store kit and all those kind of kits you can create and then import that. If you don't really need to use it in other applications, then it becomes kind of like, okay, why should we separate it out? Is it like a performance issue? Is there something else going on? But the main purpose that you separate it out into package is that you can reuse it, import it in other projects. All right, so another question is, for unit testing, is it easy? For unit testing, is it make easier to use domain thing like that or stay at MVVM? Well, it really depends what exactly you are unit testing, right? I mean, if you are unit testing something, you should be unit testing the domain. The domain that you're testing lives in the, let's say, the store, budget store, which is basically an observable object. Observable object. So you can go ahead and write your test for budget store. There's nothing stopping you to doing that. So you can actually go ahead and do that. So domain testing, that is perfectly fine. If you want to do something with the view, right? I mean, there might be some logic in the view. So probably I think somewhere over here I talk about somewhere, and this is a testing, uh, end-to-end testing, integration testing. Yeah, there we go. Testing logic in the view. So if you're testing logic in the view, if you have a complicated logic, for simple logic, I wouldn't even test, to be really honest with you. I mean, if there's a simple logic in the view, then you can write tests for the actual logical parts. See that? The logical part in the view is empty or white space, which is an extension to the string. So go ahead, write a test for is empty or white space. Here's the test. All right. Now, sometimes those things can get a little bit complicated, so you can extract it out. Like this one, if this is kind of like a logic which you have in the view itself and you want to unit test it, then you can extract it out. And then you can write tests for it right there. And I think I've linked to this article, but let me link it again. There we go. Another question is, I don't like SwiftUI data flow design to be backwards compatible with older versions of iOS. You have to do a lot of extra work. What are your thoughts? What do you mean by backward compatible with older versions of iOS? The I mean, I think they changed a couple of things, right? I mean, they added observable macro instead of observable object, but the Swift, are you talking Swift UI? Yeah, Swift UI, right? So the whole thing about Swift UI is that the data flows from the natural flow of the data is from top to bottom, from parent to child. And let's say that if I'm building an app, I'm going to take an example of, let's say, food truck store, all right, and observable. Okay, so let's say that I have these trucks. Obviously, nothing is going to work. I mean, this is just Visual Studio Code, right? And I don't know. Let's say that I also have donuts for some reason. I mean, I'm just having some weird stuff over here. Okay, and so this is our store that can provide you, and sometimes when you have a small app or a medium-sized app, you can create a store and that can have the entire state of the application. Like it can have trucks, it can have donuts. It can have some other functions like uh, feed top donuts or top selling donuts, things like that. So you can have all of these different things. Okay, so the natural flow of SwiftUI is the parent is going to get the stuff and it's going to pass it down to the child. So that's the natural flow. So let's say that we have some sort of a uh, dashboard screen. All right, that's the view. You know, now if I have truck list view, it's a good idea, and I have access to the store environment. Don't worry about the syntax. I'm just trying to do it quickly, right? Store. So the truck list view, and let's say that you have, I don't know, top selling donuts. I'm just making things up over here. Now, if I have this truck list view, it's a good idea. It's actually a very good idea to pass only the things that the truck list view needs. Now, what does the truck list view needs? Trucks. Only pass that stuff. What does the donut needs? Well, it needs donuts and store dot top selling donuts. See that? And what happens is that this really improves the performance when you are building your SwiftUI application because these are the dependencies. So SwiftUI looks at the dependency, looks at these truck list view and top selling donuts view and says, oh, what is the dependency on the truck list view? Well, it's trucks. Oh, okay. Whenever the truck changes, I'm going to reevaluate truck list view and re-render it. Whenever the top selling donut changes, which probably also means donut changes, then I'm going to go ahead and re-render the view. So that's kind of like the natural flow of, of SwiftUI. Now, sometimes this kind of flow can be broken because, sometimes we need to make reusable views and all that. And I have written an article about that, which is communication patterns. Like, how do you communicate between the parent view and the child view? So definitely check out that one. I go into more detail. It's a long article. Well, it's not that long, I guess, but it goes into like if the child needs to send some data to the parent, what can they do and what kind of different ways it can use to send that. So definitely check that one out also. All right, but the flow or the default flow for SwiftUI application is that the parent will get the data and then parent will only, and that's the important part, parent will only pass the data that the child view needs. That's it. All right. So the third question is, but if donut changes, does top selling products computed property also triggers view refresh? Um, I believe it will trigger the refresh. Yeah, you can definitely check it out. I mean, I'm just making things up over here, but you can definitely check these things out. All right. Because if it's like from here, like donuts dot filter top selling. Then we have another question regarding reusable toast messages. I have Swift Data app. Will it be a good technique to use for error messages or after successful input of data? Yeah, sure. I mean, you can definitely use reusable toast messages. I have published that article. Let me actually move the screen so I keep moving up and down over here. Yeah, it's not an article, I guess. It's more of a video, but yeah, you can definitely use uh, reusable toast messages. I think the only problem that I faced in reusable toast messages is that if you want to display the toast messages in the modal or the sheet, then you have to inject it over there. But that was just one line of code. You can do that. Some people have found a solution, like they create like a layer between the screen and all that. I found it to be very complicated. So I just went with, well, we'll just inject it with toast, right? I think it was called with toast view modifier, and we can just use it in a different screen. All right, so we have another question. Which is better architecture to implement in SwiftUI, MVVM or MVVM or MVVM with clean architecture? I don't even know what clean architecture means, to be really honest, Nirav, because if you're thinking about clean architecture in terms of what Robert Martin is proposing in a clean architecture book, that will be a complete overkill for your Swift, React, Flutter applications. You will end up with like 30 different layers, and you're not going to achieve anything in those cases. Try to make application in the most simplest basic form, and that is, I think, the biggest problem with our developers is that if it's very simple, then they will say, oh, well, I'm not a developer because this is very simple. I have to make it complicated. Let's add like the 30 layers, and that will be that. Now I can say myself a developer because when I'm going to explain it to someone, I'm going to show them 3,000, 5,000 lines of code, and I'm going to say, yeah, I'm a developer. I have to write all these lines of code, and that makes me a developer. If you show them like 5 lines of code and you achieve more, well, then you're less of a developer. And I think that's the problem with developers because they keep thinking about these things. All right. So I would say try out different architectures, try out, whatever architectures, like whatever the built-in architecture for SwiftUI, try out Redux, or try out MVVM, and see what works. All right. Because I don't really create stores. See that? I mean, even in this kind of a scenario where I'm showing you this food truck store and all the stores, if I'm building a Swift data application, it will be a little bit different. So architecture even changes when you're using different kind of platforms. All right. So here's the Swift data architecture. It's also a long article that I wrote, and I don't create any stores in that. No stores. So it really depends on what I'm working on and how the application is kind of like laid out. All right. Yeah, so try out like different kind of architectures and then see which one works for you. Sometimes, I mean, and I know it sounds kind of crazy. I don't think I've actually have an example for that, but sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that, your application might be simply a view of the JSON result, right? I mean, you're getting JSON. You know that you have created those kind of apps, right? Maybe there is some sort of API that you want to consume, and you just want to display the result of that API. Maybe do post, create, post, and all those things. But that's all you want to do, right? So in those cases, here's another architecture. I'll call it the container presenter pattern. Now this is you can use it, but again, it depends on your app. Let's say that if I'm building something, I'm going to say Pokemon list screen. So maybe there is some sort of Pokemon API, JSON API, right? And all I want to do is get the data, display it. I can go to the detail, and mostly I can view it, I guess, right? Maybe there's a screen I can change it. You can actually do something like this also, which is kind of crazy, but you can do that. So what is that called? HTTP. So right inside over here in my view, in those cases, HTTP client, I can just access this stuff inside my view. I can have a private variable for Pokemons. Now, most of the apps that you will design will be much complicated than this, but this doesn't mean that you cannot use this architecture. You can use this architecture if it's literally you're just getting the data from the server and your screen is just a glorified view of JSON data, right? I mean, and a lot of apps do that. And over here, we can actually go through the list of Pokemons. And then we can do the task modifier, and we can use HTTP client dot load, and then whatever the request is, it's going to eventually give you Pokemons. And so this kind of architecture will also work in special cases where you're basically just using JSON API and your SwiftUI app is performing kind of like basic operations. So definitely you can use that. All right. What's your experience with MMP been so far now that Compose multi-platform for iOS is stable? MMP, I'm not sure what MMP is. Kotlin multi-platform, I think KMP. Kotlin multi. I have never used Kotlin multi-platform, so I actually have no idea about that. All right. Nirav is asking, okay, I got it. If I'm asked in an interview what is the best architecture for SwiftUI, what would be the best way to answer it? Well, the answer it really depends, right? I think I've shown you a couple of examples. Like this example can be a best architecture if your app is literally just getting the data from JSON, displaying it. You can go to the details, displaying it. You can probably perform some sort of a delete operation, maybe create operation. Nothing really domain or nothing really logical. No, no logical aspects, just basic CRUD operation. This this particular architecture is perfectly fine. Most of my apps end up using this architecture where I create stores, and the reason is that uh, usually I'm writing my own server. So if I'm adding a donut, I need to access that donut from 5 other screens. So this is the architecture that I use in most apps. All right, but it really depends. There's no answer to that. I would say it really depends on the app that you're building. Yani is asking, if I have more than one Swift data model, can I use them with one view model? Suppose that I am using MVVM, or will it be very complicated? Uh, if you have more than one Swift data model with one, I don't know if I understand the question, but if you're using the view model approach, then usually when you create or when you go with MVVM, you have one view model per screen, hence the name view model. View model, right? That's like literally in the name, view model. There can be view models that are shared, like authentication status and user status log in and log out. But usually, if you go to the all the way back to 2004 with the presentation model that Martin Fowler wrote about, and then later the presentation model was changed to MVVM for WPF applications. That's how we designed the apps in WPF, where one view model per screen, because the view model was capturing all the logic that was going on in the screen also, which can be validation logic, presentation logic, and so on. So I guess your question is, if you have more than one Swift data model, can I use them with view model? Yeah, I guess you can use that. I mean, that would be fine. View model can act on several different data models. The only purpose of view model is to provide the sufficient data to the view so the view can actually process that data, display that data, mostly for displaying the data, but it can also be two-way binding and all that stuff. So yeah, sure. I mean, the whole point of view model is to make the data nice and clean and you know so that the view can display it. That's pretty much it. All right. And you guys can go and check out. I mean, I've been talking about this on Twitter for a long time, and the architecture stuff, and it's crazy to see how the things are now shifting, and people are now experimenting. Sean Allen, there's another guy, I cannot really pronounce his last name, James, who's really a good developer. They all were very much using like certain architecture, MVVM, and now they have been like moving towards more simpler architecture, which is really good. Good to see that they're trying out different things. People are trying out different things. All right, any other questions? And you can definitely check out my website for other stuff over here also. Validation patterns. I've created some videos also on validation patterns, environment object. How do you use these things? So and my YouTube channel. So you'll be able to find a lot of good resources for all of those things. And a lot of these different patterns are inspired from React. So it's always a good idea to learn React, or at least try to look at React and look at Flutter, and see that what things inspire you and how you can use those patterns in your own SwiftUI application. All right, so that's why it's always a good idea to just learn these things. All right, any other questions? But yeah, the key is, when somebody's asking me on Twitter, but the key is, um, you know, keeping it simple. Keep it simple. That's the key. Nirav is asking, how do you approach navigation in complex SwiftUI application? I've tried different approaches for navigation, um, and I've written about navigation also. Let's see, over here, it's also a decent, size article. Um, if you have like a simple app, then obviously just you can use navigation destination. That's fine, right inside the view itself or the screen itself. If you have a bit complicated, then you can create these enums and kind of like define these routes, kind of like the not SwiftUI, React. React uses React router, and they also specify their routes in one place. So you can definitely do these things. Um, and you can also create a global routing. I mean, I'll just put this article over there. There we go. All right. But depends on the navigation, I guess. Yeah, these things, like when you're creating router and observable, you can definitely use these things for providing programmatic navigation. If you have like a simple navigation that you click on some button, uh, just like, I guess, if you want to implement, after logging in, you go to the dashboard screen, then just use basic navigation. I don't think you need to create a router for those kind of things, even though those are programmatic. But try to, even though I've written all of these articles on navigation, most of the time I just end up using navigation destination, because I don't really find that in my apps I use tons of programmatic navigation. Maybe you do. If you do have a lot of programmatic navigation, you're clicking a button, waiting for something to happen, and then you navigate, then yeah, then you will have to implement some sort of a framework that will allow you to do that. And you can look into these things, and maybe that will help you out. Like you see over here, the navigate over here, uh, this is inspired from React. This is called React Router. I think it's called the navigate hook. All right. But again, even though I implemented these things, I was never really happy using it, for my apps at least. So maybe you will find a different approach. And by the way, I did publish a different navigation YouTube video. Let me actually see if I can find a link for that, because that one is not here for some reason. Yeah, this one. Let me get the link for you. Okay, this one. Yeah, this one is a little bit later, latest one. Are there any third-party packages you include in your projects, or do you usually aim to reduce reliance on third-party packages? So that's a really good question. I think you have to have a clear balance of third-party packages. The only package that I usually include is for downloading and caching images. So that can be Nuke, that can be Kingfisher. Although I can implement those caching things by myself, I think it just makes it a little bit easier for me to use those packages. I would be very hesitant to have any architectural dependency on for my app based on a third-party package, because that third-party package may or may not exist tomorrow. And then my whole app, basically the pillars, the foundation of the app crumbles and the whole thing falls down, right? Or maybe Apple releases something and those third-party packages, they don't really work now because they need to update, because something got changed, something fundamental, something core got changed, and those packages were relying on some other things and so on. And we have seen so many different things, right? I mean, we have seen projects like Alamo Fire. We have seen really great projects, but now no longer being maintained. We have seen projects from Facebook, parts. We have seen a lot of things. So we have to be very careful when you are trying to having a dependency, a third-party dependency on which may or may not exist tomorrow. TCA, yes, the composable architecture, it feels very similar to Redux. Redux is I guess, Redux is used a lot. Redux over here. It's a JavaScript library for kind of like a global state management. I actually believe that you already have Redux built in, or global state built in SwiftUI, and it's right there, right? This is Redux. This is the global state. So if you are looking for a solution kind of like Redux without all the complexity of middleware dispatches and actions, then maybe you will be interested in using the environment object in SwiftUI, because that is the global state. All right, and global in terms of where it is injected, not in terms of singleton, which is the same as Redux, by the way, right? I mean, Redux is global only where it is injected and all the child elements. So keep it simple. That's the lesson that you will learn, that keep everything simple. Any other questions, anyone? Let me see the questions coming from Twitter. Other question is, do you think Skip has a future as a go-to cross-platform technology, considering it isn't really baked fully or backed fully by a big company, that is KMP backed by JetBrains? Skip is definitely an interesting project, and it allows you to write Android and well, Android and iOS application using SwiftUI. So this is Skip. It's definitely interesting. It might be more for companies that have iOS developers who already know SwiftUI, and they just want to somehow put their apps on the Android store or the Google Play Store. So for those cases, it can definitely, it can definitely make sense to use that. Um, it's not really backed up with anyone, I guess, right now. I think it got included on some Swift language website or something, just like Vapor. But no, I don't. Yeah, you're right. I don't think it's backed up by anyone. It is definitely an interesting project. I've created some courses on it. I created some apps on it. Sometimes you do have to, like, if you're using something that is not available on Android, like Swift Data is one of the example, Apple Maps is another example. So basically, in those cases, you just substituted what is equivalent on those frameworks. So for Apple iOS apps, it will be Apple Maps, and for Android, it will be Google Maps. So you'll have to still write the code to get the Google Maps to work. But in simple cases, like if you have simple application, which is just reading the data from API, displaying it, most of the time you don't end up doing any of those changes. And it does also have some weird semantics with generics. If you're using generics, which we usually do in your HTTP client or HTTP layer, then you will have to do something special to get the generics to work. We'll see that how that kind of progress. But yeah, if you want to learn more about it, if you're interested, uh, I do have course on Skip that I developed, which is right there. Not really sure how long the course is. Probably it's like 10-hour long or so, but you can definitely watch the video and check out all the, the content and everything. All right. So if you're interested, you can definitely check it out. All right. The other question is, how do you structure your network layer using async and await and combine together? I don't really use combine in my network layer. I can actually show you, let me see if I can actually find my network layer. It should be over here somewhere. So this is my project. It's called Hello Market. I still sometimes go and update this project. This is a e-commerce application which will show you how to build a client as well as a server. So the client is made up of in Express, JavaScript, Express.js, Postgres, using SQLi, and the server is made up in the server is made up in Express.js, JavaScript, and SQLi and Postgres SQL, and client is SwiftUI. Over here, I did use HTTP layer. I think it's called HTTP client. So this is what my HTTP client looks like. You can definitely check it out. Remove the stuff that you don't need, obviously, but it's just one large file, and it's more like a JSON, generic JSON HTTP client. All right. Yeah, and you can remove stuff that you don't need. But that's for my project. If you are looking for something very particular, then obviously it will be different, and you'll have to modify the code or write basically your own. Right? Any other questions? All right, somebody's asking on Twitter about testing and if I do a testing workshop. Actually, it's kind of weird because I am doing a testing workshop. If you go to workshops, and that person was not able to attend the Swift data workshop. Well, the testing workshop is the next one. So that is Introduction to Testing in iOS using Swift, and that will be coming up on June 20th. Unit testing, mocking, integration testing, end-to-end testing. It's a 3-hour workshop. So if that person on Twitter is on the live, you can ask question on the live, on the chat, so that everyone can see your question. All right. So you can go to azamsharp.school and check out the workshops. And the June 20th, it is testing workshop, 3-hour long, by the way, live on Zoom. And then there's another workshop on introduction to server-side Swift using Vapor. That's in August. So that will take you how to create your the server with his Vapor. So that's going to be a really good workshop too, so if you're interested. All right, anyone has any other questions? Okay, so if you don't have any other questions, we can definitely start wrapping up. All right. So once again, everyone, if you don't have any questions, then yeah, we'll just wrap up. If you do have questions, you can actually use the YouTube chat to ask those questions, and I'll be able to answer those questions. All right. And we'll try to do this every, like, every couple of weeks. Sometime I'll do like a session on maybe SwiftUI architecture or Swift data or even testing or Vapor, a small session, like maybe 30 minutes long. But yeah, we will try to do this. Do you use Xcode instruments regularly? I don't use it regularly. It really depends on if I'm feeling some bottlenecks that are like caching is one of those things that caching issues. And obviously, you should always use instruments before you're trying to deploy your app, or even like before you're checking in your code, on those bases. All right. But for instruments, I did publish a video on instruments on my YouTube channel. Probably you have already seen it. Let me see if I can find the link for that. It's right here. Share. Okay, so let me put it over here. This is a video on instruments. So this video is going to show you how to catch the network traffic and then see that the images are not being cached. Saba Turdesam is saying, finally I'm working as an iOS developer. Your courses help me a lot. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking my courses. I really appreciate it. And Nirav is saying, I like live session. Thanks for information. We'll wait for next live session. Yeah, sure. We'll try to do this every couple of weeks. So you can ask your questions, and um, well, sometime we'll do an actual live session where I will just discuss something. We'll build an app or something. All right, so you can see that how different things can be done, and yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, so that's it. We are going to wrap up. And once again, if you have any, if you want to check out the courses, if you want to support my work, then you can always go to azamsharp.school and check out my courses, check out my workshop. I think Azam Sharp School it hosts one of the largest collection of iOS videos. Probably, I don't think there's any other website that has more videos. I think it's like more than 200 hours now, and it just keeps on growing. Or yeah, way more than 200 hours, because the exclusive content alone is like a lot of hours. So definitely check it out. I'm sure you're going to love it. And WWDC is coming soon, so I'll obviously be making more courses depending on what Apple is releasing. So we'll check it out. But if you have any need for testing, skip fundamentals, SwiftUI architecture, Supabase, Firebase, Swift data, core data, server-driven UI, the list just goes on. And there is a free course. Actually, I want to give you this course. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. It's a Swift UI Fundamentals course. Swift UI Fundamentals. This is a free course you can register. It's for basic, it just covers kind of like the basic stuff, state management. And if you have never done Swift UI, then this will definitely going to help you. All right. But apart from that, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And yeah, if you have any question, you know how to find me. I'm on Twitter, Azam Sharp, so you can always follow me over there. But again, once again, thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next live session. All right. So thank you once again, and thanks everyone for coming. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you have one more question, definitely. I have to prepare interview in 2 months. Any suggestions? With ChatGPT, you can find it easily to prepare for interview questions. Just go to ChatGPT. Let me see if I can show it to you. But yeah, just use ChatGPT to ask the questions. All right. Let's say, I mean, depending on your position, I guess, like what kind of a position. If you're senior applying for senior position, I would say, uh, give me senior position iOS developer questions. And it's going to give you all those questions. Sometimes you can even go to Glassdoor, which is a website where you have um, different companies, and there is a question and answer or interview tab. You can also click on the interview tab, and they can actually tell you what actual questions were asked in those cases. So here are some really good questions. I mean, I asked just ChatGPT, give me senior position iOS developer questions, and here are the different questions. I mean, these are so many different questions that you can just go through. Yeah. So I think with ChatGPT and all these large language models, it has become much easier to, I guess, prepare for the interview, or at least, uh, you know, find these kind of questions. If they are going to do any kind of a data structure and algorithm, then you can ask them like what kind of an interview questions I can expect. Is it going to be like a data structure algorithm? I have to invert a binary tree. So those kind of thing you just have to practice more, because those are completely different from the work that we do, in our daily basis. But for these kind of questions, you can always ask ChatGPT. Yeah, and then ChatGPT will uh, give you those answers. All right. So hopefully that will help. And you can see ChatGPT pulled up like a lot of questions over here. Uh, so that can definitely help you. An interview system design question asked to senior iOS engineer. Yeah, I think if you're a senior iOS engineer, they can definitely ask you a system design question, and we can say, give me system design questions. So ChatGPT is going to give you some iOS developer. There we go. We got all the system design questions now. Create a course on programmatic UI kit. Actually, I already have a course on programmatic UI kit. Let me actually show it to you. It is, see, azamsharp.school. If you go there, there is a course on programmatic UI kit, which is somewhere over here. Here we go, this one. iOS development using UI kit. This does not use a storyboard. It says actually without the use of storyboard, so it's all programmatic. And you can watch the video to see if you like this. Um, there are a number of projects that I do in this course, like the Near Me app, which is a maps application, budget application, store, which is kind of like a hooking up with a API, and all that stuff. So this is all programmatic right there. All right. All right. Any other questions? I think this was fun. I think we already talked like for 1 hour, so that should be enough. And hopefully, I'll be able to see you in a couple of weeks, or next week we'll talk about something else. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate it.